Hello and welcome to another episode of Showcasing North Leeds, where I'm on a mission to find all the local businesses in North Leeds and beyond. And today I am delighted to be welcomed, joined by Leasa from Winston Solicitors. So thank you for joining me.
Good afternoon.
And Leasa is the conveyancing manager, but also partner at Winston Solicitors, and you've been partner for just under 5 years.
It'd be 6 years next year.
6 years next year. But you've got over 20 years experience in the industry.
I have indeed.
So thank you for joining me.
No
so jump straight into it. The first thing I would like to ask is, what made you choose this career path? What made you get into this?
I've always wanted to do law. So when I was at school, obviously selecting A-levels and things, I always wanted to do it. However, I didn't actually perform as well as expected.
Right.
So I did a long way around. So I did a HND in legal studies at Blackburn College, and then I went to Lancaster University and managed to get back on track that way. So I've always enjoyed law, and conveyancing, which is property law, wasn't an area that I thought I'd really enjoy, and I just fell into that by mistake and loved it ever since.
Okay, that's good to know that you love it then.
Yeah,
that's always good. And going straight into Winston's then, so from our point of view, we found you guys just because on one end of the transaction, I think it was Sidra who was dealing with it, and she was handling the buyer's side. And for us, it was the efficiency and how quick she was with doing everything that drew us automatically to you guys. So I suppose the question is, what separates you? What makes you guys different from the rest?
I suppose it's in the core of the firm, really, because our mission statement is when service wins, and I've implemented that within the conveyancing team as well. So people don't ever complain about law. It's about how the transaction's gone, so it's been slow or fast. So it's down to being really efficient and putting the customer first. Right. And we put ourselves in the customer's point of view, so that we expect them to be told where we're up to without them having to chase us. And it's same with yourselves as an agent. So we've got a really good case management system that everyone has access to. So each key stage, it generates an automated update to you as the agent, the customer, and also if there's a financial advisor, we can add them on. So the process is more straightforward. So I think that's it. And I think from a customer's point of view, we're not a conveyor belt process either, so you're given an individual person. So I've got a good, strong team, and if you instruct, it will be the person that you've spoken to at the start who's done the quote, that will be the person that will see you through to the end. So you build a really nice relationship and trust.
That's good to know. Well, the thing with it for us, from our point of view, again, being the agent, it's usually we get the everyone says the easy side. We have to find the buyer, and people tend to dread the conveyancing part of it. What is it that people are so worried about typically with conveyancing?
I think there's so many, which sounds really dreadful, but there's so many bad firms in the industry that gives the good firms potentially at the outset a risk of it being a really bad service. So it's past experiences, and depends whether or not you're from the UK or not, because our legal system's different to other places. And I suppose the negative is if it doesn't always go to plan and you're a first time buyer, you potentially can lose a little bit of money if you can't manage to get it over the finishing line, because you can't recoup the cost of your searches back. Your survey, once you paid for your survey, you can't get that back. So I think it's the not knowing what could go wrong, and also the bad reviews for the firms that really, you can genuinely see them that they don't care, and you know that when you speak to somebody at the other end of the phone, and we do when we speak to other law firms.
I suppose we're going into that as well in a little bit, because people will always, one of the major factors will be price and cost. And I think when my thing is always like, you get what you pay for.
You do.
And those firms that you mentioned, the ones that are typically not as good, do you find that they're the ones who are offering like the service for next to nothing?
Not necessarily. We're independent, whereas there are some law firms that are connected with large estate agencies where they have a contract and they will pay for the work, so to speak, and there'll be somebody in the middle that will take a chunk of money for the process itself. So the client's paying more, the solicitors firm's getting less, and it's just the types of firms that can do that are the ones that's got more of a large setup of staff where they are in a process. So for us, you do get what you pay for. We're not expensive, we're not cheap, we're just in the middle, but we do offer a really good service. Okay. And what we do at the end of a transaction is we've got an independent review process. We don't do it, we pay for a company that sends out these reviews, and good or bad, they go straight on our website. Right. So we really pride ourselves on doing a good job.
That's good to know. It's like it generally is like a thing where it's random, and it can be whether they've had a great experience or not so great. It's not post it anyway. So you've got your reviews will show then that everyone having such a good experience.
It's when you go and buy a car though, isn't it? You're not just going to go and buy one without doing a bit of research. So my advice to any client who's thinking about buying a property is do your research. Look at the law firms that you might want to look at appointing. Look on the website and look at the reviews. If the reviews are great, then that's a really good starting point.
Okay. And then, like you said as well, with regards to timing and getting towards the end, everyone wants the conveyancing part to be fast. And I think the average is 12 to 16 weeks?
A sale's normally 6 to 8, and a purchase is 8 to 12. Right. But it just depends. I mean, we've done them much faster than that, but they can also take longer because if you're in a chain, you can be sat ready, but you are dependent on somebody else. So if we were in that situation, what we'd be looking to ask is, can we manage to get a chain break somewhere? So a chain break is where if we're purchasing and we're buying from somebody, is that person buying another property? And if they are, could they break the chain? So we could buy their house, they could put it into their things into storage and wait until the rest of their chain is ready. So if we can manage to encourage a chain break, we'll try. Okay. But if that can't be done, then we just have to wait until everybody else is ready.
What would you say then, from your client or anybody who's listening, what can they do to get themselves ready as soon as possible? Like what 3 things can they do to get ready as soon as possible?
I would say being organised at the very outset is probably one way to be. So if they go through with a mortgage broker, to start to see, can I get a mortgage? How much can I get it for? So have that mortgage offer in principle would be ideal. Also, think about what information is my solicitor going to need. So if you're getting a gift as an example, as a solicitor's firm, we've got to money launder the gift. So we need to know where the money's come from. We've got to carry out additional checks against the giftors. So having all of the information ready as early as possible will help. Survey, clients always ask me, when should I organise my survey? I always say to them, as soon as possible, because the sooner you know what you're facing with regards to property, the sooner you'll know, do I need to arrange for any extra experts to go in to look at like an issue with the roof? And then obviously, as you know as an agent, is whether or not there need to be any negotiations on price reductions. Yeah,
for sure. Okay, that makes sense then. And then as the vendor, when would you say is the best time to employ your conveyancer?
I would say as early as possible, really. There is a little bit of paperwork at the start, so all firms send a client care letter and some paperwork. So the sooner you have that, especially if you're selling, the Law Society protocol forms, so there's a fixtures and fittings form and a property information form, and if it's leasehold there's another form. They take some time to fill in. Yeah. So if you get those organised, get them out to the client, they can start to fill them in, gather together the information. So if it's a sale, if there's any guarantees or you've had any works done, your completion certificates, your planning permissions, all of that lodged with your solicitor. Then when a buyer's found, we can issue a contract pack and we can get moving really quick. Yeah. So I'd say be as organised as possible. But there's also some cautious clients. So for our clients, say it was a first-time buyer, they're really reluctant not to spend too much money at the very outset. So what we say to them is we'll do whatever they want to do. So opening a file for us, we don't charge. And we say to them, if you want to wait for your mortgage to be issued, we won't do anything until that happens. So they'll instruct us, They'll fill in the initial bits, we'll do the ID check, and then we'll put it on hold, and then they can give me the green light. If then there's an issue with the mortgage, they haven't lost anything.
Yeah.
But if everything's fine,
then you can go.
Then we're straight steam ahead.
Okay. That's interesting as well with first-time buyers. And anybody who's not moved for a long time, like what are the milestones in the what is the process from instruction to completion? Yeah.
So there's obviously slightly different to explain it from a sale and a purchase.
Yeah.
But obviously the key is to get to an exchange of contracts.
Yeah.
So an exchange of contracts is the most crucial bit. An exchange of contracts is when the contract becomes legally binding by all parties. At that point, you have then a fixed moving out date or a moving in date.
Yeah.
So the key is to get to that bit as soon as possible. And at that point, then the price can't change. You can't negotiate anything else. It's locked in. And then obviously everyone can book either removals and start frantically getting everything in order, or if you're selling, you can obviously start dismantling your big piece of furniture. You're under contract, so you know that the completion date is locked in, and then obviously you can organise things. So that's really the main thing. And obviously completion is when they either have to move out on a sale and they get the money. On the purchase, we obviously send the money to the other side and they can pick up the keys, which is a really nice phone call to make to the client to say it's all gone through, go get your keys.
Yeah. And then, so before all of that then, because we're just trying to break it down for anybody who doesn't know.
Yeah.
So you've got you initially instruct a solicitor, and then from that point you have draft contracts are issued.
Yeah. So on a sale, we would do so we'd they'd instruct us, we'd send out the client care paperwork, we'd then check them out in relation to money laundering checks, etc. We'll then put together a contract pack which goes to the buyer's solicitors. At that point, we've done everything that we can do on a sale. What the other side will then do is they'll go through that pack. The likelihood is they'll ask some questions. We call it raising inquiries, which is asking questions. We will then answer them, or we'll take our clients' instructions on things we can't answer. Behind the scenes, the buyer's solicitors, if their client's getting a mortgage, that will be underway. They'll be applying for searches, getting the search results back. Sometimes from the results of the searches, they might ask some more questions. And then once we've answered anything that they wish to ask, if it's a legal question, we'll then start discussing moving dates. And you need to agree a completion date before you can exchange.
Yeah.
So then the next thing then is we agree in principle, we then exchange, and then that date's set in stone. So from a sales point of view, once we've issued a contract at the start, we're in the hands of the other side. But on the purchase side, and we're buying for a client, we've obviously got all of the legwork to do, so there's more for us to do on a purchase. So we will advise the client on each individual search result that comes back. We'll send a mortgage report, we'll arrange for them to get signed up as early as possible. We don't wait for everything to come in. That's probably another reason why we're a bit more proactive. We don't wait for all the search results to come back, mortgage offer to land, then sit and have a look at everything. We look at it at the point of the contract pack coming through, and then we get the client signed up with as many documents along the way, because once you start talking about moving dates, it's quite a stressful time is that. Whereas if that's the point in which you need the client to come in, which we don't have to get the client in, we can send it out to them, they've signed. It's literally just one more document for them to sign. So it's nice and straightforward.
So you're doing it as and when it comes and it's ready, so in that way it's ticking it off.
But we also accommodate any client's needs. So if a client wants to come into our office, we do have plenty of meeting rooms. We can see them face to face. We can see them by Zoom call if they really want to. But we also tend to send things out by email or by post. So clients don't really need to come in. But they can if they want.
They can if they do. You get those old school clients who will want to come and sit down and sign everything and whatever. So can you explain what simultaneous exchange and completion is and when it would be used? We tend not to encourage simultaneous exchanges and completions. So a simultaneous exchange and completion is where you actually physically get locked into the contract and you also complete, so it's the same day. The downside to that is you've got no assurity that it's going to happen. So if you're buying a property and that's the way it's got to be because you're in a chain,
It's not ideal because you could be the middle. And if we don't manage to exchange, so you've booked time off work, you've had to book some removals, and all of that, and if we've got a mortgage, we've had to order mortgage funds in. Until you exchange, it's not guaranteed to happen.
Yeah.
So it could come to the day of crunch day and it doesn't happen, and then it's just sheer disappointment.
Yeah.
So the only times when you tend to do a simultaneous is where perhaps there's an issue with the property, where, and it's not near an issue, where the client is, a tenant's moved out.
Yeah.
And it's really, you want that our clients want to be in really, really quickly, as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But a tenant, so we always say to a client, don't exchange until you've checked that property to make sure when the tenant's moved out, they've not caused any damage. I'm not saying that they would, but it does happen.
Just in case.
And also they don't always move out on time.
Yeah.
So that's sometimes when you'll do a simultaneous exchange and completion.
Okay.
We just don't encourage it because it's just the uncertainty. We will do it, but we would also advise pros and cons to clients and make them make the decision if they want to be part of that.
How long can you, because we find with people as well, everyone wants to get to that, as you said, everyone wants to get to exchange. Once you've exchanged legally bound, everyone, it's almost like you feel the belt buckle like release a little bit, everyone can sit back and relax.
Yeah.
How long would you advise, or how long can it be between exchange and completion?
We try, but it doesn't always go to plan. I always like to give my clients as much notice as possible. So a good week would be the norm. And that way you can exchange, the client then can definitely book everything. I always advise them to have the removal company, keep in contact with the removal company to make sure they've still got the slot. And when I'm about to exchange contracts, we have to get the client's authority that day. And I always say to the client, if you check your removal, you can definitely still get them. So I don't want to commit to something and they can't physically move. So a good week is brilliant. I do have an example of where we've got one where we're buying from somebody that's moving overseas. So that's a big move. So they've got to book train fares, they've got to do all of the really intricate booking of removing their items, and that process takes longer. So we will be exchanging contracts on one of those on Monday, but it's not completion until the middle of December.
Right.
So that is a long gap.
That's what, 5?
Yeah.
5 weeks?
So what I've managed to negotiate with the other side solicitors on that one is, under the contractual terms, the risk of the property for any client buying passes on exchange. So we always have to say to the client, when we exchange, your insurance must be in place by no later than that date. So because we're going to be exchanging and we're not completing for a while, I've managed to negotiate an amendment to the contract. So the current sellers will be keeping the property insured up until the day of the move. So then my client will still start the removal, book the insurance and send me evidence that it will start on the day of completion. But they're not wasted, say 5 or 6, however long that is.
That makes sense.
So if we do have a long gap, we try and think about pros and cons and how we can protect the client the best.
And then this is more education as well, I suppose, for me and a lot of people out there. If you exchange contracts and don't complete, what is the consequence for, depending on who it is, who's breach of contract?
When there's, our contract is set, the standard conditions of sale which is set out in the contract, which is why I mentioned that I'd varied that contract for the insurance purpose. So you have to, we're abided by those standard conditions of sale. In the conditions of the contract, there are provisions for late completion. So it does sometimes happen where you're in a chain and there is a problem. It tends to be that the mortgage funds haven't arrived. So everyone's legally bound, so it depends where you are and who the defaulting party is. And how long the chain is. Sometimes if it's just you and another party and your client, we were selling and the client doesn't live there, so it's a deceased property, and the buyer's mortgage monies haven't turned up, then we can abide by the conditions of contract terms, but we can also let the client make a decision. So the contractual terms makes late completion. You can either serve notice or you don't have to, and you serve notice to make time of the essence, which then starts the ticking clock in the new contract terms. So then there's a period of time in which then the defaulting party has to come up with the funds to be able to complete. Every day that they're late, there is an interest charge. There is something in there that potentially you could argue you can claim out of pocket expenses. That is difficult to do. But what we can do, say that buyer was 2 days late, but there's a reason for it. We've had clients that have said, look, don't serve the notice because there's a fee for that. And I'm not bothered about charging them interest. So it depends on who you are, who's the defaulting party. But unfortunately, there is a provision. So when it gets to the end of this date in the standard conditions of sale, if that person still can't complete at the end of that period, you can either vary the terms and give them some more leeway, which most people wouldn't, or at the end of that time, then the 10% deposit can be kept. By whoever's not the defaulting party. So if we're selling, we can keep the 10% deposit and give that to our client. So you really don't ever want to be in that position where you're risking 10%.
No, of course, for no reason.
Which is why most law firms are proactive, where you make sure the only reason normally you can't complete is the mortgage funds. So as a rule at my firm, we always request mortgage funds for the day before. And we also make sure we've got confirmation from the lender that the mortgage funds are going to be released. Because that is one of the reasons why. And sometimes with COVID, we had COVID. So we were in unknown territory at that point. So there were a couple of examples where completions didn't happen. But normally you don't have a problem with a mortgage. So it just depends. As I said, there are some law firms that still get the money in on the day. And a lender, if they're releasing them on the day, that means any point in that day. So it can be a bit of a difficult one. You've
been really helpful with this. So I think a lot of people will get a lot from this. I always say at the end, is there anything that I have not asked you that I should have asked you that people would benefit from?
I think you've probably asked everything. I think the key is do your research. So pick the right, the agent's really important as well. Picking the right agent, because they're the ones that will be able to keep a chain together. We work really closely with an agent, and I know we work with you. So if we ever needed something, we would say to you, this is a problem, and we would try and work together with you. So picking the right agent and the right law firm is really crucial. Getting your mortgage organised as soon as possible. Also having some people go directly to the lender. I actually think it's quite good to go with a broker, because the broker will be able to give you more advice. So at the moment, we're finding, because the mortgage products the interest rates are not great, and some clients have had a good mortgage product that's got a good rate. If the clients are trying to negotiate on a price, actually a price reduction might impact negatively the mortgage. They might lose the good product, because when you change the purchase price, you've got to notify the lender that your purchase price has changed, and that might hinder, because if there's a price reduction, your loan to value, so the difference of what you're borrowing to what you're purchasing it's quite tight. You then fiddle with that price, then you might lose your product. So we always say to clients, before you do anything on the price, speak to the agent and speak to your broker, because actually a price reduction might not be the way to go. So we just try to be as open with clients as possible, and advise them the best we can from every angle. But working with everybody alongside each other is definitely makes a big impact.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that, and imparting all your wisdom and knowledge and experience over 20 years. So thanks so much for joining me, Leasa.
Thank you.
And obviously thanks everyone for watching and listening.